The O'Reilly Factor's on tonight.
I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
We ask Mr. Ben Carson to withdraw from the presidential race.
More insanity over Muslim stuff, and this is overriding how working Americans are getting hosed and how our foreign policy is falling apart. Tonight, Charles Krauthammer and I will deal with it. Some conservative Americans angry with Pope Francis, but should they be? As the Pope prepares to come to America, we'll have a special report.
What do you think about Trump?
I like him in the way that he's causing absolute chaos.
Also ahead, Jesse Waters going to Oktoberfest and talking politics.
Do you think she should be worried about Benghazi?
I'm here to drink. I don't know.
Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly reporting from Los Angeles. Thanks for watching us tonight. What really matters in the presidential race? That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. It is downright sad watching PC litmus test. You could be the most brilliant problem solver on the planet, but if you don't support Planned Parenthood, Black Lives Matter, global warming, you are not worthy. And now it's ridiculous Muslim stuff that the media is propelling.
So do you believe that Islam is consistent with the Constitution?
No, I don't. I do not. I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
And we ask Mr. Ben Carson to withdraw from the presidential race because he's unfit to lead, because his views are in contradiction with the United States Constitution.
Give me a break. Dr. Carson believing that Islamic tenets don't line up with Judeo-Christian philosophy on which the country was founded, and he's not allowed to say that? It's his opinion. Well, here's a bulletin. Unlike many Muslim countries, we have free speech in America. And Carson's opinion shouldn't disqualify him from anything but individual votes, if that be the case. All of this PC fog has shrouded important issues, like the new census report released last week. It says median income for working Americans is 6.5% lower than it was in 2007, 7 years ago, because 2014 was the census stat. That means only one thing. President Obama's economic policies have failed, right? Democrats will never admit that, but facts are stubborn things. Unlike Mr. Obama, poverty and income inequality have become worse in America, especially in the minority precincts. But the president will never say that. While salaries for working folks are down, but the president will never say that. And the liberal media largely ignores the facts, instead trumping up dopey stuff about Muslims. And then there's foreign policy. Almost a year ago, I spoke with former Obama Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta.
We govern either by leadership or crisis. And today we are largely governing by crisis.
Look, when President Obama says, and you agree with him here, that arming Syrian rebels, who we don't even know much about, is going to blunt the ISIS fanatics, guys like me say that's just bull. That's not going to happen. And it didn't happen. Again last week, another very telling story, downplayed. It seems that the Defense Department, despite having $500 million to train anti-Assad Syrian rebels, has failed dismally.
We've heard reports about the attacks on those individuals when they were reinserted back into Syria. Can you tell us what the total number of trained fighters remains?
It's a small number, and the ones that are in the fight is we're talking four or five.
4 or 5 men. That's all the Obama administration has in the field right now for $500 million. 4 or 5. Unbelievable. If it sounds like a Saturday Night Lights live skit, you're correct. Hogan's Heroes could have done a better job. But the national media barely covering the story because it makes the liberal president looked bad. All the Republican presidential candidates should know they're not going to get a fair shot with the media. And they had better stop answering loaded questions about Muslims, physical appearances, and who has more pep. This country is devolving quickly. It has nothing to do with Muslim political candidates, a phony war on women, or global warming. It has everything to do with staggering incompetence. And that's the memo. Now, for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. The Muslim line of questioning is stupid, right?
Look, I think it's a legitimate question, and I think the right answer is depends who the Muslim is. If we have the American equivalent of Anwar Sadat or of King Abdullah of Jordan, an American equivalent of that, sure, I'd support that person, or I could support that person. So it's a dumb question, it's a dumb issue, and it should be answered as a dumb question it is. But you raised a couple of others. Look, I agree with you entirely that the liberal media are suppressing all this other stuff. The first recovery in American history where there's a decline in median income, the humiliation and catastrophe that's happening in Syria. The Russians are in there. They now have combat aircraft with air-to-air capacity. Well, ISIS has no air force. That is not to fight ISIS, although that's the ostensible reason that we are negotiating with the Russians. We are being humiliated and overtaken in Syria, the whole Middle East. That is all true. It's all being downplayed. However, when you blame the media for questions about appearances or about the lack of pep, you're looking in the wrong place. Those issues were raised by Donald Trump, the runaway front runner. He's the one who said of Carly Fiorina, look at that face. That was not an invention of the liberal media. And he's the one who's gone on and on and on in just about every speech about how his supposedly primary establishment opponent, Jeb Bush, is a very, very low-energy guy. He's got this teeny, tiny, weeny energy, while Trump has this giant, big, huge energy.
You're missing a very important
And you need a psychiatrist to deconstruct that. That's the point.
You're missing a very, very important point. Okay.
What am I missing?
Okay. It's true Trump has raised the issues of personal appearance and pep. But it's also true that the media has seized upon that to make it the campaign all about it. All right? So my advice to the other Republican candidates and to Trump himself, all right, is to not answer those questions and to get down to, hey, every single American's getting, you want energy? Here's what I would have said whether I'm Jeb Bush. You want energy? Here's energy. All right? It's down in 7 years, 6.5% median income. And I'm outraged about it, and it's not going to happen if I were president. That's my energy. That's what I do.
So let me understand this. So you're Carly's principal advisor, and they ask about Donald Trump saying, look at that face, insulting her looks, and you are going to whisper in her ear, don't answer that question, talk about the minimum wage, instead of saying, all America heard what you said, when he tries to pretend.
No, that was an ad lib, though.
That was persona.
Okay, look. No. Carly Fiorina and anyone else who is insulted, all right, has a perfect right to come back. But then you pivot off that and you say, you know what? That's all a piffle. You love that word, don't you? A piffle. Here's what's important. Here's what I would do. Because you're allowing the media, and you know this, to obscure the important issues besetting America.
Obscure the important issues?
They have no interest in it.
Obscure the important issues? Donald Trump has been laying out issues and programs and plans. He has conducted 3 months of ad hominem attacks on other Republicans. He's done it with relish, with showmanship, and with some skill. That's what Republicans have been talking about for 3 months, because he's been dominating the debate.
That's what the media has been talking about.
He has turned it into an internecine war. So if you want to blame the media for playing on it and for getting ratings out of it, okay. But let's understand who's the partner in crime here.
You can point your finger at anybody, but that doesn't mean that the Republican candidates can't say, this is garbage and I'm going to do this. And I will take an issue with you over the Muslim question. What Carson means, all right, is that the tenets of Islam do not line up with the tenets of Judeo-Christian philosophy. They don't line up in his opinion. Therefore, he doesn't believe that a Muslim could carry out the vision of the Founding Fathers. That's his opinion, and he's entitled to it without being threatened and called a bigot.
I'm not threatening him. I'm not calling him a bigot. But if you're asking me to comment my opinion on his opinion, here's what I say. Unless you fancy yourself an Islamic scholar, which I assume that Dr. Carson doesn't, you have to concede that in any religion, Christian, Jewish, Islamic, or whatever, people bring their own interpretation and understanding of that. And again, I say there are a lot of Muslims in America. I don't know whether it would apply universally, but there is nothing intrinsic in the religion that would make a believer, and there are all stripes of believers in the U.S. and around the world, inimical to the Constitution. And if you think that's true, then I think you're making a pronouncement on a religion that you are not an expert on. I'm not even sure you could say that about a Christian or about a Jew. And we do not,
look,
I'm not saying he's not allowed to say it, but I'm allowed to say that he's got it wrong, and he's throwing.
Sure, and that's your opinion, and we respect that opinion. Okay, that's your opinion, and we respect it. But his opinion is different, and it's based upon, I believe, actions, not writings in the Koran. But both opinions should be stated and debated. That rhymes. And it's a good debate, Charles. We always enjoy having you on the program.
Well, look, it's a good debate. That's not a fruitful debate. Again, we're ignoring all the other issues, and that's why when you get a question like that, you ought to answer it simply, step away, and then you talk about the declining income, and then you talk about the Russians expanding in the Middle East as we're doing nothing. That's the point.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. And we have a very sad item out of Washington to tell you about tonight. It affects all Fox News viewers directly. Mary Catherine Ham's husband, killed on Saturday while riding his bicycle in a charity event. He was hit by a car. Now, tomorrow we will talk about Jake Brewer with Juan Williams, who knew him. The unspeakable situation is difficult for us to process, for anybody to process. We have posted some information on BillO'Reilly.com about it, and of course, we are praying for Mary Catherine and her family. Some things are just incomprehensible. Next on the rundown, Governor Scott Walker drops out of the race. Brit Hume will analyze that in a new poll on the presidential candidates. And a bunch of Hollywood people supporting the socialist Bernie Sanders will tell you who they are. Factors coming right back from L.A.
For all your business news and information, find Fox Business Network in your area.